Left my cheating boyfriend right before my sister's wedding, rejected his public proposal, and have begun to find peace. My sister Eve, 34F, got engaged last year, and I, 29F, am her maid of honor. We weren't always so close when we were younger, but now she's become my rock, always protective, always looking out for me. Life hasn't exactly dealt me the best hand when it comes to relationships. I've had my share of bad experiences, but I also like to think I can still spot a genuinely good man from a mile away. My boyfriend Kevin, 33M, and I have been together for 3 years, living together for over a year now. But Kevin really messed up. I found out he'd been texting and messaging other women, some of them his exes, some randoms, some even bots posing as sexy Latinas on Instagram. How ridiculous is that? But even if it seems almost laughable that he got caught up with literal bots, it's still cheating. He'd even sent a closure message to someone he claimed to have loved years ago. That one, honestly, stung less than all that explicit trash I saw. It broke me. So, before even confronting him, I called my sister, tears choking my voice, and told her everything. She was furious, probably more at me for accepting this than even at him for doing it. I realized after that maybe confiding in her first was a mistake, but at the time, I was just devastated. I was packing my things, getting ready to leave, I even had the car packed. But when I confronted Kevin, he pulled out every manipulative card in the book. Every feel-bad-for-me trick he could muster, and, shamefully, it worked. I ended up staying, despite knowing I should have left. I still loved him, cared for him, and wasn't ready to let go of the comfort he represented for me. But after everything, Eve refused to speak to or acknowledge him at all. She revoked his invitation to her wedding. She doesn't trust him, period, and, honestly, I totally understand. She doesn't want him to ruin her wedding photos with his presence. I can't even say that she's wrong. The idea of him being in those pictures makes me hesitant too, especially if things don't work out. I don't want a permanent reminder of his face in those memories. And now I'm stuck in between. I'm not mad at my sister, I'm on her side more than his, if I'm honest with myself. Kevin messed up, and these are the consequences. But I'm torn, trapped in the aftermath. He's devastated, he adores my family, and he feels like everything is crashing down. Me? I feel the same. If you think it's messy now, just wait. Thanksgiving and Christmas are around the corner, and Eve's wedding is a few days after Christmas. Our family is small, just my parents, Eve, her fiancé, me, and Kevin. How am I supposed to bring Kevin around when Eve won't even look at him, when she's sworn to secrecy and won't say a thing to my parents? It'll be obvious something is up, especially since the only thing anyone will talk about is the wedding, where he's clearly not invited, and of course, we have to keep that secret too. When Kevin inevitably isn't there, I'll have to lie and say he has COVID. What happens after? I have no idea. Should Kevin talk to Eve directly, try to fix things? Is our relationship doomed? I can't imagine being with someone my sister doesn't trust. Then again, I sometimes wonder if she'll ever think anyone is good enough for me, but this feels like another level. The kicker? My parents, especially my dad, love Kevin. Let me go back for a minute, because this pattern didn't start with just these recent texts. In April, I discovered messages with his exes, with other women, and plenty that were disgusting in their own right. That moment, I started secretly gathering my things, mentally preparing to go. It took me weeks to work up the nerve to confront him. I was scared. Scared to lose him, scared about upending our lives. In the end, I forgave him. We had a big talk. I laid down the law, thought things would change. Of course, they didn't. He stayed the same, lazy, unsupportive, just not a good partner. September rolled around. We were curled up watching TV, but in my gut I knew the truth. After all this, hearing advice from others really hit me hard, and, truth be told, I needed that wake-up call. My sister is a saint for even putting up with me through this. She's always been an excellent judge of character. I know, deep down, I should listen to her. I've been through years of therapy, starting at just 14. I thought I'd moved past all the nonsense, but Kevin kept gaslighting me until I couldn't see straight. Manipulation is powerful stuff, you don't realize it until the fog finally clears, as it has now. I can see what's real, the version of him I grieved isn't real. He's not going to be the man I want, the one I thought he could become. I need to face the truth and give myself the alone time I deserve. I have options, places to go, people who will help me. My soul is screaming for a way out. The plan is simple now, I'll pack my bags for real this time, wait until he's at work, and go. I need a few days to regroup and get organized, but this has to be it. I don't need Kevin, I know I'll be fine, even better, without him. For anyone going down a similar road, trust your instincts, lean on your support systems, and don't settle for less than you deserve. The wedding? It's going to be legendary. Especially since he won't be there. Someday, I'll find someone who truly deserves me. Wherever my real, future partner is, I hope I meet him soon. For now, I'm promising myself, I'll never settle for less than I deserve. He was on X, and I watched as he opened his messages and quickly exited out. Right away, I knew something was off. The suspicion gnawed at me, so when he left for work, I couldn't help myself. I checked his socials. I wanted to see if my fears were justified, if he was talking to anyone again. And just like that, there it was, new messages with a bot on X. She was sending him almost nudes and pictures meant to entice, and he was responding, calling her baby and everything. I keep saying her because, let's be honest, it was probably some middle-aged man somewhere trying to scam desperate people. My world just stopped. I went numb first, and couldn't even muster up tears. I never thought he'd be that guy. We had been friends, actual friends, for years before we started dating. He was the one who always warned me about men like that, told me to avoid the ones who stayed in touch with exes or constantly talked to other girls, said they were just keeping options open and were disgusting. He convinced me he wasn't that guy. Now, with all this staring me in the face, my whole reality feels flipped upside down. I don't even know what's real anymore, and that sickening doubt is what finally made me break down in front of my sister. I ended up telling her everything. Well, almost everything. I kept the incident from April to myself and only confessed what had just happened with the bot. This isn't new pain for me. I've been cheated on before, and even more than that, I was groomed by a man when I was 14. I didn't really know better at the time, I thought I did. That horror lasted for years, with him emotionally abusing and manipulating me. Relationships haven't been easy for me since then. I've become an expert at dissociating from my feelings and avoiding confrontation whenever possible. That's what I'd been doing, skirting around everything with Kevin. Finally, though, we talked about it all the other day. He broke down again, completely devastated. Afterwards, I tried to talk to my sister about whether she'd changed her feelings about him at all, but her answer was final. She didn't want to talk to him, didn't want to acknowledge him, and he was still banned from her wedding. Kevin is upset, feels it's unjust, but says he understands. Still, he keeps insisting she'd come around if only I advocated harder for him, fought for our relationship. But what was I supposed to advocate for right now? That's basically what I told him, albeit more gently. I've been in back-to-back relationships ever since my early teens until my late 20s. I've learned so much, loved deeply, lost hard. Kevin was supposed to be the nice guy. I picked the good person over money, over looks, over everything. A partner I thought would be a wonderful dad one day, a real-life companion. And yet, here I am, our relationship teetering because of something so stupid, so ridiculous, so utterly embarrassing. He was messaging a bot, that's what broke us? It seems almost laughable if it didn't hurt so much. But really, it's the echoes of those first messages I saw back in April that won't leave me, and I feel them all over again. While typing this out, I realize deep down I know the answers to my own questions, but I struggle with just letting him go so easily. It's hard not to believe him when he cries and says he's nothing without me, that he can't go on without me, because honestly, I feel the same way. But it just feels so unfair. After everything, I had my car packed one night and waited for him to get home from work. When he walked in, I told him I was leaving. We spent the next 2 days talking over everything. In the end, I stayed, more for him than for myself. But now, a month later, I'm just lost and sad and confused. I love him, I hate to see him so hurt, but I can't ignore that he's the one who caused this. Is this really that uncommon? Is this relationship already doomed? Should he even try to talk to my sister, or is it just hopeless now? I did it. I left. I woke up before the sun, packed the last of the things I'd been quietly moving into my trunk, clothes, my passport, the box with my grandmother's ring, and I put his spare key on the counter next to the hideous ceramic spoon rest his mom gave us. I texted him after I was already on the freeway, a simple "I'm safe, I'm going to Eve's, please don't come." He called and called and called. I let the steering wheel vibrate under my fingers and just drove. Eve met me in her driveway barefoot in the cold like a crazy person and pulled me out of the car before I could change my mind. She had the guest room ready, the good sheets washed, a lamp with a warm bulb so I wouldn't feel like a patient. I didn't even cry that first night. I just slept, deep and black and dreamless, and when I woke up I could hear her in the kitchen humming and the smell of coffee and cinnamon made my chest hurt with relief. We decided to tell our parents before Thanksgiving because the pretending was making me feel like I was going to throw up. I thought my dad would dig his heels in, insist on hearing Kevin's side, but I showed him the screenshots and watched something close in his face. He went quiet and then he said, very calmly, "Okay." My mom took my hand and rubbed my knuckles with her thumb like she used to do when I was a kid. It felt like both of them were trying to hold me up from opposite sides. I wish that had been the end of it. The morning of Thanksgiving, while we were basting the turkey and arguing over the sweet potatoes, the doorbell rang. I knew before anyone said anything. He was on the porch with a pie in a brown bakery box and a tiny Tiffany blue ring box tucked half under his palm like maybe we wouldn't see it if we didn't look directly at it. He asked if he could just have 5 minutes and started on a speech he must have practiced in his car, how he'd been looking at rings, how this was proof he was serious, how he would do better, be better. I stepped onto the porch in my socks and shook my head. I couldn't find words at first. He tried to kneel. He actually tried to kneel on my parents' welcome mat. Eve was at my shoulder in a heartbeat and her fiancé was already moving past us like a shadow. He didn't touch Kevin, just stood there, tall and solid, and it was enough. My dad came to the doorway last, eyes furious and disappointed in the way that makes you feel 5 years old, and said, "You don't get to propose to my daughter as an apology." I can still see Kevin's mouth open and close like a fish. He kept saying, "I love your family, I love your dad," as if that was the thing that would unlock the door. It wasn't. He left with the pie and the little blue box, and for the first time since all of this began, I didn't cry for him. I walked back into the kitchen and stirred the gravy and my hands didn't even shake. I thought the worst was over. That weekend, my Instagram pinged with a new message request from a weird account with no posts. It was the bot, or whoever runs those accounts. They had screenshots of his messages, the ones where he was calling her baby and begging for more pictures, and they wrote, "If you know pay we send to your father Jim and your work," except they actually had my dad's full name, which means he gave it to them. That detail felt like a cold hand closing around my throat. We sat at the kitchen table, me, Eve, her fiancé, reporting the account, locking down my privacy settings, making a report with the police even though they said the best thing was to ignore it. The scammer's messages came for 2 days and then stopped when I didn't respond. I changed my number anyway. Kevin texted the old one, then the new one, then my email, then my work email. I didn't answer. Silence is a muscle. It got stronger. I went back to the apartment with Eve one afternoon to collect the last of my things. He was at work. I found he'd left a ring on the coffee table, not from the little blue box, something different, something cheaper, like a pacifier he was hoping to plug me with. There was a note underneath in his messy handwriting. "We can fix this. Please wear this while we fix it." I left it where it was. Eve taped a photo of me and her as kids on top of the note like a little altar and we walked out. The weeks slid forward. Bridal fittings and florist calls and last-minute seating chart changes filled the spaces where panic used to live. My dress needed to be taken in because apparently heartbreak is a detox. Eve made the seamstress add pockets because she insists I will need somewhere to keep my lip balm and my courage. We told the venue coordinator to put Kevin's photo at the front desk with the caterer's list of dietary restrictions. No Kevin. It was ridiculous and also not ridiculous at all. I forwarded the coordinator his name. She replied, "Got it," like she was crossing off an item. Chairs, candles, no ex-boyfriends. He sent a bouquet to the bridal suite the morning of the rehearsal with a note that said, "For my future wife," like we were in some tawdry rom-com and I'd race down a hall somewhere and into his arms. The florist made a face and took it away. We kept steaming dresses. We watched a squirrel out the window try to carry an entire bagel up a tree and for 10 minutes the three of us laughed so hard there were tears, and they were the good kind. On the day of the wedding, I put my phone on airplane mode and slipped it into the pocket Eve demanded I have. Walking down the aisle ahead of her, I looked at our parents holding hands and felt this sudden, wild rush of peace so strong I had to swallow twice to keep it from spilling out of my eyes. During the vows, when her fiancé said he'd cherish her and keep her safe, I glimpsed Eve looking at me for half a heartbeat, like, "You're safe too," and it was all the blessing I needed. The reception was a blur of light and music and my dad pulling me into a dance and saying into my hair, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," and me saying, "I didn't either," and then we just swayed while the band played a Motown song that has been played at every family wedding we've ever had. Snow started falling in the alley behind the venue, tiny white confetti, and I stood out there at one point in my stolen shawl and let it land on my lashes and thought, I am out. The space in my chest that had been clenched for months finally loosened. I could feel the outline of myself again. He didn't show. Not at the church, not at the venue. Maybe the coordinator stopped him before I ever knew. Maybe the photo at the front desk did its job. Maybe, finally, he understood. Or maybe he just found a different door to knock on. It didn't matter. He wasn't at my sister's wedding. He isn't in those pictures. He doesn't get to be tied to the happiest day of her life, or mine, like a bad caption. I signed a lease last week on a small studio with crooked floors and sun that spills onto the kitchen tiles at 9 in the morning like it's being poured. I bought myself a new duvet and the exact set of tacky plates I've always loved but he hated. Last night, I ate pasta out of one of those plates on the floor because the couch doesn't arrive until Tuesday, and I listened to the radiator make whale noises and laughed, by myself, in my empty apartment. It echoed. It sounded like a beginning. So, can my relationship heal from this? The one with him, no. It isn't supposed to. The one with me, with my family, with the part of me that believed I couldn't survive walking away, that one's already started too. It's quiet and solid and real in a way that has nothing to do with rings or apologies or pies on porches. And when I think about the wedding, about taking my sister's veil out of its box and lifting it over her head, all I feel is light. The photos came back on a Tuesday, slick and warm from the printer, the kind of paper that makes your fingers feel expensive. We spread them on Eve's dining table and moved them around like tarot cards. There was one that made me go cold, a wide shot of the church steps at dusk, snow hanging in the air like static. If you look past the fairy lights, past the laughing ant, past the groomsman mid-sip, you can see him across the street. Hood up, head down, the shape of him I would know from 100 yards, like a song I hate but still recognize on the first note. He is just outside the edge of it all. Not in, just there. I took that one and sat with it. I emailed it to the coordinator, and she replied within minutes. We turned a man away with his description at 3:12 p.m. He did not come inside. She wrote the time like a witness. Somehow the precision helped. I didn't frame that photo. I didn't delete it either. It lives in the stack like a ghost and I let it stay, because ghosts are just shapes of things that couldn't hold on. The next week my period didn't show up when it always does, and all the light in my little kitchen felt too bright. I bought 3 tests at the drugstore because I still believe in overkill like it's holy, and carried them home in my coat pocket as if they were eggs. I shut the bathroom door and watched the radiator rattle and thought, if the universe is laughing at me right now, I can't hear it. Negative. Negative again. I sat on the tile and cried and then laughed and then cried, because relief has a hysterical twin. The following Tuesday I was in a paper gown making small talk with a nurse about gift wrap while the doctor said, "You'll feel a pinch," and I said, "I'm ready." Afterwards I ate crackers in the waiting room and texted Eve, "My uterus is a vault now." She sent back a key emoji, then a vault, then a tiny confetti popper because she's insane. I went home and put the heating pad on my belly and watched steam curl up from my tea and felt so in my own body it ached, but in the good way, the way you feel after you stretch something you've been clenching for too long. HR emailed me 2 days later to come by when you have a moment. Some hero had sent an anonymous subject line to the general inbox with attachments of screenshots and a note that said, "Is this the kind of person you want representing your brand?" I sat in a glass box, while my boss made the face of someone who wants to say I'm sorry but isn't sure if it's professional. I told them the truth. I said it calmly and without the mess that used to follow his name around like a storm cloud. They nodded. They said they were sorry this was happening. They flagged the email to IT and told me to forward anything else. I walked out of there with my shoulders lifted like a magician had cut my strings. He doesn't get my job. He doesn't get my mornings. He doesn't get my coffee machine and my favorite mug. He gets less than that. He gets nothing. On New Year's, my phone lit up at 11:56 with a text from an unknown number that said, "Hey, who is this? Kevin added me to this group?" And then another number, same. And another. 10 of us. 15. I scrolled up and found the original message, a dissertation in Notes app font sent by a number I don't need to save because I know it like I know a scar. "I've been a bad person, I'm trying to make amends, I'm sober now from Parn and from being a piece of SH." He had typed my name in the first line and not noticed the group was visible to itself. Tiny bubbles started popping. "Who is op?" He told me he was ready to settle down. He asked me to send him a picture of my feet. I told him $10 and he sent it. I'm 19. I could feel my pulse in my wrists. I typed and erased and typed again. In the end I wrote, "You don't know me, and you don't owe me anything. Block him, take care of yourselves. You are not crazy." A girl with a sunflower in her profile picture said, "Thanks, Mom," and I laughed, and then I wanted to drive to her house and make her spaghetti and tuck her hair behind her ear. At midnight someone's champagne popped in my building and somebody on the 5th floor screamed like they'd been awarded a puppy. I put my phone face down. I wasn't going to watch his apology ricochet off strangers at the turn of the year. I opened my window and listened to the city sound like pots and pans and firecrackers in the inside of a crowded heart. It felt like a clean page. He filed a Venmo request for $312.58 for ring deposit. I hit decline and then blocked him there, too. He emailed the landlord pretending to be me to try and reroute the security deposit. The landlord called me and used my full name like a shield. "Don't worry," he said. "I've been doing this for 20 years. He isn't the first." I offered to bake him cookies and he said he preferred brownies. Eve and I made them and I wrote for security reasons on the Tupperware in Sharpie like a lunatic. I am allowed to be a lunatic about brownies. I am allowed to be a person who labels things. His mother called me on a Sunday afternoon, a number that used to mean holiday invitations and leftover lasagna. She wanted to meet for coffee as women, which is how you know it's going to be a conversation where you will be asked to be the saint and the sponge both. I said no. I told her I wished her well. I hung up and put on my shoes and walked to the thrift store that smells like old books and lemon cleaner, and I bought a chipped blue bowl for $1.50 because it caught the light like water. At home I set it by the door and filled it with my keys and the courage I pretend is a physical object. When my couch finally arrived, the delivery guys left muddy footprints shaped like quotation marks across my floor. I spent a whole afternoon pushing it 3 inches left, 2 inches right, then surrendered and sat on it in defeat, legs tucked under me, sipping a seltzer and watching the way dust floats when the heat kicks on. I registered for a community ceramics class and, on the first night, the instructor said, "Clay remembers everything you do to it," which is either the cheesiest thing I've ever heard or the truest. Probably both. I made a spoon rest that is deliberately loud and ugly in mine, swirls of marigold and a ridiculous little lip. When I set it on my stove I thought of the hideous ceramic spoon rest his mother gave us and how I left it like a relic on our counter when I walked away, and I kissed my fingers and pressed them to my own and said, "Hi. The best thing is small, like the sun. It spills in at 9 and makes a stripe on the floor where my plant sits, the one I'm trying not to kill. My neighbor across the hall has a cat who patrols like a security guard and sometimes slides a paw under my door to fish for my doormat tassels. The building super came and installed a proper chain on my door without me having to ask twice. I hung a print of a beach I've never been to above my bed and now and then I lie there and invent the sound of that water. My dad drops off soup in mason jars and lifts each lid and smells it like he's a scientist. My mom texts me pictures of her hands holding whatever she's cooking that day, low and out of frame like the world's most wholesome influencer. Eve and I argue about where to put her wedding album on her bookshelf and then don't put it anywhere because we end up on the rug looking at it again, both of us in sweatpants, both of us saying, "Look at your face," like we're watching ourselves on a tape delay. Last night it snowed again, that kind where the flakes are big enough to see the geometry. I put on my coat and went outside to the little square of roof I'm not technically supposed to stand on, and I stood there anyway, letting it land on my lashes. Somewhere a siren wailed, somewhere a train sighed, somewhere a door slammed in a way that didn't make me flinch. I thought about the girl on New Year's with the sunflower and the way her "thanks, Mom" made me laugh, and about how maybe mothering can be a thing you do for yourself, too, just as gently. I went back inside and shut the door with my new chain and made tea and set the spoon on the spoon rest that is ugly in the most deliberate way. I turned on the lamp with the warm bulb so I wouldn't feel like a patient. I sat on my couch that is a little too big for the room and a little too soft and exactly right. I am not waiting for any knocks. If there's a hand at my door, it will be mine. A week after the snow melted into dirty meringue at the curb, there was a knock that sounded like somebody tapping a coin against my door. Not a fist. A nickel. I looked through the peephole and saw the beige of an envelope and a retreating elbow in a navy jacket. Certified mail feels like a dare. I signed with a pen that didn't want to write and took it to the kitchen where the light is kinder. Small claims. He had written it out like a grocery list. $312. $58 for ring deposit, $50 for gas, $5,000 for defamation of character. He had spelled defamation right and character wrong. I laughed in a way that made my teabag bob like a buoy. Court is fluorescent and humming, like the inside of an old fridge. The benches are the color of bad coffee and there are signs everywhere that say things like "Don't talk to the judge like that." A man in a suit that didn't fit called our names and I stood up first. Kevin was late by 3 minutes that stretched so long I thought we might be dismissed just on the principle that time is real. He came in red-cheeked and damp at the temples, holding a stack of papers like a student who'd printed the internet. The judge was a woman with a bun that gave me hope, a small jar of cough drops on the bench, and the exact neutral expression of someone who has seen absolutely everything that can be seen between two humans and a number. He talked. He talked about love like it was a policy. He talked about how I slandered him to his job, to my sister's wedding vendor, to the universe, maybe. I said, "Your Honor," and my voice didn't shake, and I explained, calmly, that I had forwarded harassing messages to HR after receiving them, that the deposit was between him and whatever jeweler had agreed to take his money, that we were never engaged and that no gifts changed hands except a bouquet that the florist threw out. The judge used the phrase conditional gift and the phrase not a party to the contract, and when she said, "Sir, small claims is not where you come to repair your reputation, this is where you come about your blender," I nearly levitated. "Dismissed," she said, the word like a gavel itself, and he turned toward me in a way that made the bailiff stand up and say, mildly, "Not here." In the hallway, the vending machine made a sound like a sigh and gave me 2 bags of pretzels for the price of one as if the universe was winking in a very cheap way. It didn't end there, of course, because nothing ends with a satisfying stamp in real life. A week later someone from a company with a name like a toothpaste called my extension and said, brightly, that Kevin had listed me as a reference for a client-facing role and could I speak to his character. The word did a little somersault between my ears. I asked for her email. I wrote back and said I could confirm the dates we'd lived together and that I did not recommend him for any position that required discretion, professionalism, or access to customer data. I stayed so clean in my language you could eat off it. She replied with one line that said, "Understood, and I'm sorry." The group text from New Year's turned into a thing with gravity. After the balls dropped and the champagne went flat, someone made a new thread without him and gave it a name that was both a joke and not, The Vault. People slid in and out of it like a subway car, sometimes only to breathe for a second and say, "I blocked him," sometimes to ask if anyone else had gotten the same paragraph at 2 a.m. with the same misspelled word. Sunflower Girl sent a picture of a muffin she'd made that rose lopsided, like it had been surprised in the oven. I wrote, "Pretty muffins don't taste better." She asked if I wanted to get coffee in a completely public place with exits, and I said yes. We met at a campus cafe where every table was stolen from a different church basement. She had chipped nail polish the color of robin eggs and a laugh that she apologized for like it was a body part she didn't order. I didn't tell her what to do. I told her what I did, and what I wished someone had said to me, "Your hesitations are wisdom." She nodded like she was pinning something up on a bulletin board in her skull. When I went to leave she hugged me in that quick way of girls who bounce back from everything. She texted later that she signed up for a pottery class. I sent her a photo of my ugly spoon rest and she wrote, "God, she's beautiful," and I felt ridiculous proud, the way you feel when your plant makes a new leaf as if you personally invented photosynthesis. My landlord put a little camera near the mailboxes after someone's package disappeared. On a Sunday I watched the footage of a man in a bomber jacket stealing a yoga mat like it was a heist. It wasn't him. It was no one I knew. Still, seeing myself in grainy black and white take my junk mail and do a little step of annoyance at the electric bill was both mortifying and sweet, like catching sight of yourself in a store window and recognizing your walk. Work asked me to go to a conference in a city by the ocean that looks exactly like the beach and the print above my bed. "We can send Janice," my boss said, "but you'd be good in the Q&A." Janice hates Q. She says the A should come with dinner. I said yes. I sat on a hotel bed that was made by a person who learned to make beds from a nun and looked at water that went all the way to possible. In the morning before panels and lanyards and coffee and bats, I took off my socks and rolled up my jeans and walked into the ocean until the cold felt like a certificate. It was January. A gull laughed like an ant. My ankles went red, then pink, then numb. I didn't ask for a sign. I let the waves erase my footprints like a predictable metaphor, then I made more, because that's what you do. On stage, a woman asked me how I handle crisis communications and I didn't say stop dating men who think they're an emergency. I said, tell the truth faster than the rumor can run, and watched a few people write that down. Eve handed me a mug with the word "ant" in a font so bad it must have been chosen on purpose. She had tucked a little pregnancy test inside like it was a boat. My eyes did that hot filling thing, and she did that wide-eyed face she does when she's split between laughing and crying, and we stood in her kitchen holding a mug in the future. I pressed my forehead to hers. I asked how she was feeling and she said, like I might barf if anyone microwaves fish within a 10-mile radius. Her husband danced into the room singing the national anthem to the wrong tune because he gets scrambled when he's thrilled. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet and let myself be joy, not the person making it okay for everyone else. My parents walked in later with a plant and a card and my dad pretended to faint, and when he stood up he looked at me in a way that made me feel like a Russian doll, layers of daughter and sister and soon to be aunt nested one inside the other, solid. Kevin's mother left a foil-covered dish at my door like a ceasefire. Lasagna. A note in looping cursive that said, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Please don't let this change how we feel about you. I stood there with it in my hands and the hallway light pinched my eyes. The neighbor's cat slid a paw under my door, fishing for the tassels on my mat, and caught the edge of the foil, and made a sound like a tiny cymbal. I took the lasagna to the church on the corner where they feed people on Tuesdays and the guy at the back door said, that'll go quick, like he was noticing something good about me that had nothing to do with my history. Every once in a while, a number I don't know sends a prayer hand emoji. Every once in a while, a stranger on the street is the exact tilt of his head, and my stomach drops like it remembered something my brain forgot. I have a note on my phone where I write down license plates I think I might need later. It reads like a poem no one would publish. I take it to therapy and we joke about it and then in the same breath don't joke about it at all. Safety is not a mood. It's an infrastructure. The super found a door sweep that keeps the hall light from knifing under my door. The chain he installed clicks home like a small applause. I signed up for a weekend craft fair in a school gym where the basketball hoops bowed like widows. I brought a box of spoon rests and 3 bowls that try very hard to be bowls and a little sign I made that said bad dishes for good kitchens because I am who I am. People drifted by and touched the glaze with a finger like you touch the edge of a cake. A woman bought the biggest, messiest spoon rest and told me her husband says stuff doesn't have to be pretty to be useful, and she said, I want both, and we both laughed with our whole teeth. A man asked if I ever make ashtrays and I told him I make ashtrays that think they're plates, and he said, so do I, and for a second we were just 2 people in a gym where the floor squeaks. Sunflower girl showed up in a yellow beanie, cheeks pink from the cold, and bought a small bowl with the world's most ambitious lip. For my keys, she said, and then under her breath, and my standards, and we high-fived like a couple of idiots. He texted on Valentine's Day a picture of a handwritten letter, a page of lined paper like a school assignment, the words running downhill. I know flowers are hard for you right now, he wrote, like he'd invented my lungs, so here are words, as if words hadn't been the problem the entire time. I blocked the number and swept under my couch and found 2 bobby pins and a dime and a Lego that doesn't belong to me. A friend's kid must have smuggled it in his pocket and shed it here like a breadcrumb. I put the dime in the blue bowl by the door and the Lego on my windowsill like a joke about a future that isn't mine yet. When the conference reimbursed my flight they did it fast, like I had been owed the air all along. When the ocean keeps living without you, it's not cruel. It's instruction. I bought a little jar and filled it with 3 pieces of beach glass that look like candy and set it next to the spoon rest that is loud and ugly in mine. The building heat kicked on and did its whale song and I answered back, soft and stupid, because now I can. The photo of him on the periphery of the church steps lives in a box in Eve's hall closet with other things that happened and also didn't. The newest photo on my wall is of my sister's shoulder, my hand on it, right before she walked. In it you can see a blur of me in the mirror, and my mouth is doing a thing I don't remember it doing then. Smiling, not like a performance, but like a fact. The door knocks sometimes. It's always packages, or my dad with soup, or the super with a new smoke alarm, or the neighbor's cat wanting to broaden his jurisdiction. The other night I opened it and there was no one, just a little paper bag from the bakery with 2 almond cookies and a receipt that read, comped. I stood in my doorway eating both like a woman who has learned how to be her own witness. The crumbs made a map down my shirt. I followed it back inside. I turned on the lamp with the warm bulb that makes rooms into rooms. I boiled water. I stirred sauce with a spoon I don't have to account for. Somewhere, his group chat is quiet or it is not. Somewhere, he is writing the same paragraph again. Somewhere, a judge is putting a cough drop in her mouth and waiting for the next blender to walk through the door. In here, The radiator sings and the clay remembers, and I am not a caption on anyone else's day. I'm just a person in a small apartment, with sun at 9 and a plant that refuses to give up, making a life that is truer than any apology.